No, we have big news. We have breaking news that's come through over the course of the last 24 hours, and it's a big trade for the Steelers. There was some weirdness for me trying to figure out exactly how all this went down, but the Dolphins have traded Jalen Ramsey to Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh gets Jalen Ramsey, Jonnu Smith, and a seventh rounder. Miami gets Minkah Fitzpatrick and a fifth rounder. At first, Frank, it looked like this was being reported as two separate trades. It looks like it is one trade. So knowing what we have now, Ramsey, Jonnu, and a seventh, and then Fitzpatrick and a fifth, in your mind, who won the trade?
Yeah, it was strange because of the mechanics of how it was all reported. It was like Jalen Ramsey's going to the Steelers, and it's like, oh wow, that's really interesting. And then it was like a minute later for Minkah Fitzpatrick, and it's like, oh, that changes it a little bit. Yeah, it's one of those rare trades where I get why both sides did it. And Miami had a couple guys they really wanted to offload. I mean, now there's like maybe Minka wasn't happy at Pittsburgh. So I get you're kind of trading issues for issues there. But on paper, just the roster, I don't think either team really got better. And it's kind of weird to say that. Like, why make the deal then other than to get rid of some of your problems? But I think Ramsey and Fitzpatrick, they kind of neutralize each other, right? They're both great players in their own right. Fitzpatrick's a little bit younger, if you want to argue that for the Dolphins side, even though he's going to be 29. And then Jonnu Smith had a really nice year for the Dolphins last year, but they had Pat Freiermuth. Nobody was looking at the Steelers depth chart saying they really need a tight end, but this is Arthur Smith's guy. Like, he's coached him everywhere. He's just Jonnu Smith will always have a job, and yet he could be 58 years old. As long as Arthur Smith is an offensive coordinator somewhere, Arthur Smith is going to stand on the table to get Jonnu Smith and give him way too many touches. So, but I don't know how it really makes the Steelers that much better on offense unless Jonnu Smith becomes kind of a de facto number 2 receiver. I didn't really love this trade for either side. It doesn't make me think that the Dolphins got the best side of it. Doesn't really make me think the Steelers are closer to beating the Ravens for the division or anything. So, who won the trade? I kind of say, nobody.
I think Frank is telling us that we should all find someone who looks at us the way that Arthur Smith looks at Jonnu Smith. So that's going to be our top takeaway from today's show. But I agree. I think that this is less about who won and who lost, because when I reached out to a bunch of coaches and execs around the league, they kind of just view this as the Dolphins and Steelers are on drastically different timelines right now. There's life cycles of team, competitive life cycles. Where are you? How close are you to actually contending? And what do you need to do to reach that, and in what timeline? And I think when we look at this, it's easy to initially say, oh, the Steelers are going all in. But when I talk to people around the league and they look at the salary cap and the cash spending, the Steelers haven't pulled all of the levers that they're able to pull over the course of the next 12 months when I talk to people. This is less about all in and more about win now. I think all in would also suggest, kind of along the Rams F them picks line, that you're mortgaging your future for your present. And the Steelers did not give up significant draft capital to do this. They're not giving up a whole bunch of salary cap flexibility for future years. Yes, a little bit with Jalen Ramsey, but this isn't guaranteed money. So when it comes into it, I think that the Steelers are saying, what can we do to try and maximize our chance to get over that divisional round hump in the playoffs in 2025 season with Aaron Rodgers as our quarterback, especially because Aaron Rodgers said last week that he's, quote, pretty sure that this will be his last season in the NFL. So you have to say that, like, the Steelers are in two different buckets right now. There's what are they going to do in 2025 and how are they going to try and make a deep playoff run now that they have the best quarterback they've had since Ben Roethlisberger. And then after that, we'll figure out what they do 2026 and beyond. They're not going to be out of options, but that's not what this trade is about. This trade is about this year.
Yeah, but Jori, do you think they're closer to winning now? Like, do you look at the Steelers like, oh wow, they're a lot closer to, again, beating I think the Ravens are going to be the best team in football. Do you think they're closer to beating the Ravens in the division? Do you think they're closer to winning a Super Bowl? I just don't. Maybe you do, and it's fine. Like, I can see that side of it, but I personally, I'm like, I see the Steelers as kind of this old team that's chasing what, a 10-win season, maybe, like tops. I just don't see them being much better than that.
Well, Frank, your point about age is really good, because that's one of the reasons that the Steelers have this short window for their current iteration of their team. It's not just Aaron Rodgers, and it's why Aaron Rodgers was a good fit for them, because Cam Hayward, even TJ Watt in some regards, like, you're not going to have this core with you forever. And so you want to figure out how can you maximize it this year. And because they're so close, they're not a terrible team, but they're also not a team that's winning in the playoffs. That's why you try and do a little bit more. I would say on the offensive side, I mean, they're better with Jonnu Smith than without him. You can say he's a little bit redundant with Pat Freiermuth, but I mean, I'm working on a story about the Bears right now. And when you have the ability to be versatile with your tight ends and have multiple tight ends in there and not have defenses understand whether they're going to be planning to be receivers or blockers, you can disguise some of your looks. And we know that Arthur Smith has an understanding of who Jonnu Smith is as a player. And oh, by the way, he just had his most productive year, so you can take a look at why. So I think offensively, they're not worse off by having him. They're clearly better, even if it wasn't necessarily necessary. So then you say, well, Jalen Ramsey versus Minkah Fitzpatrick. And people I talked to around the league over the next 3 years would rather have Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's younger. He's a better locker room presence, much steadier. Jalen's been traded to 3 teams now. Minkah's kind of got that leadership. And I think that Minkah probably has a little bit more football left in the tank, according to most people I talked to. Both of them are elite. Neither of them are as fast and as great sticky coverage as they used to be. But the reason that one defensive assistant told me they would rather have Jalen Ramsey this year than Minkah Fitzpatrick is because cornerback is a more premium position. You think about the man coverage, you think about the 2-minute drill, you think about the red zone, you think about those third down. I think that even if they're both going to be playing some degree of a hybrid role at defensive back, Jalen's man coverage is something that is more of a premium skill than what Minkah primarily does. And so that's where you kind of get of oh, okay, well, now you have Jalen coming. He can be that man coverage guy. He'll play inside, he'll play outside, he'll play nickelback, probably some safety. You have a little more versatility. And I think that's why Pittsburgh said, we're not necessarily breaking the bank for him, even if we're paying more for him than Minkah, and we can get Jonnu Smith in there.
One more quick thing before, because I don't want to dismiss what you said about the 2 teams being on different timelines. It's kind of crazy how the Dolphins have just fallen off the map. It really is. If we think about 1 year ago today, we were talking about, the Dolphins are coming off an 11-win season. They should make it right back to the playoffs. This is and I just wrote the Dolphins preview, and so many people wanted to compare them to the greatest show on turf, right? That was the thing. The Dolphins are the 1999 Rams. Oh my God, those takes didn't age well. A year later, we're basically saying the Dolphins are in a rebuild. This is just a team. That's why I didn't love. Part of me is why get Minkah Fitzpatrick back? Just get future assets, because it's clearly not happening for you this year. And I think they even kind of understand they're not on that timeline of win right now. So it's just think of a team like the Broncos necessarily. We love them right now. They're on the rise. They're just made a playoffs. We could be sitting here in a year with the Broncos or any team in that bin and be saying, wow, this team's already in a rebuild. Because that's what happened to the Dolphins. It came and went for them so fast. And I think I really think that there is a floor potential with the Dolphins this year where they might really, really be bad. Some injuries would have to play into that. But yes, this trade and being on different timelines, like you said, and I think that's a really good way to put it, it kind of just, it was very stark to me. Now with I knew the Steelers, they are aging, they're trying to win, all this kind of stuff. The Dolphins kind of being this probably ain't our year. It's wow, this franchise went really south in a hurry.
Guys, I'm also going to argue here that Jonnu Smith is a loser in all of this because, frankly, look at his production. We keep talking about the fact that he's been with Arthur Smith, but the best production Jonnu Smith has ever had in his career came last year when he didn't have Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator. And to me, it's a fair point to look at this and say, okay, he caught 88 balls for 884 yards last year. If you do the math, that's more than any 2 years combined that he was with the Titans. So you think about those Arthur Smith offenses, even with the Falcons, 50 catches for 582. The explosion of Jonnu Smith, whatever we think of Jonnu Smith right now, was crafted by being in Mike McDaniel's offense, not by being in Arthur Smith's offense. So I don't know why we're so quick as a general football society to simply because these 2 people have been together to say, well, this is going to work. I think at some level, if you're Jonnu Smith, you're coming off a Pro Bowl, you're coming off a year where you had explosive numbers, you're 29 years old. This is your chance to go out there and get a big old bag from someone and really see yourself in a different light. And instead you go to an offensive coordinator that has not, in their time together, I think maximized most talent he's had and certainly hasn't maximized Jonnu. So lost in all of this to me is that the player is actually the loser.
I think I would ask you, though, who were his quarterbacks during that time, and also how often was he getting targeted? Because his 111 targets last year were by far the most of his career. When he was with Arthur Smith, it was more 30 to 65 targets is what we were seeing. He had 70 in Atlanta the 1 year. And so he had success in the opportunities he had. I think the question to me is not what he's going to do in terms of the production. It's what is he going to be asked to do. I think he'll be able to deliver, and I don't think Arthur Smith was necessarily keeping him from catching the ball, but I think you have to ask who else is on that roster, which again maybe goes to your point about Pat Freiermuth and DK Metcalf and some of the other guys. And I was talking to Broncos tight end Adam Troutman recently about this, just sort of like the futility of the tight end position isn't the right way to put it, but basically their inability to win relative to what people think, because you're being asked to basically be an offensive lineman, a receiver, among other things, while also having the production of a receiver. And so the question to me I would ask is, well, how often is he going out and how often is he in a run blocking situation or even a pass blocking situation? And based off that, I think we'll be able to see what his input would be. So yeah, if you're Johnny Smith, you want to make sure you're getting that production, because ultimately the production rather than the blocking is what gets you paid as a tight end. But I do think that some of this is about opportunity, not just ability for him to succeed when given the opportunity.
And I hear you on the quarterback thing. I will just say this: 17, 18, 19, 20 were his years with the Titans. He had Marcus Mariota before everybody figured out Marcus wasn't necessarily the greatest answer. But then he had a Ryan Tannehill that got paid. Like that is a Ryan Tannehill that got a massive deal, right? Like, so it's not like he had the worst quarterbacking in the world in that situation. And then I'm going to couple that with the fact that Arthur Smith has had weapons in Atlanta, had weapons for how many years as a head coach. And we all just sat here and said, man, when are we going to watch these guys actually blow up? Like, I think there are some people, like Arthur Smith is really liked by a lot of people. I know people that have covered him with the Titans for when he was there that really liked him too. I understand he's well liked. I just think the reputation of Arthur Smith far exceeds what we've actually seen from proof of concept on the field.
I agree with that. I mean, but to the Jonnu point, to get back to the Dolphins real quick, the second half of last year, they centered their entire offense around Jonnu Smith and Devin Achane getting like dump offs and stuff. It was honestly maddening at some point. You're like, why are you throwing the ball so often to Jonnu Smith when you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? It just didn't really make any sense, but they did it. Nothing has really changed in the Dolphins' infrastructure on offense that much. And now you remove that guy and you have absolutely nobody to replace him. Now, I think Miami's going to trade for somebody, whether it's Michael Mayer or Taylor Higbee or Kyle Pitts or whoever it's going to be. They almost have to trade for somebody. But again, getting back to the Dolphins, Jonnu Smith was the crux of their offense last year. Like, he was legitimately maybe their offensive MVP. Like, I guess Achane, but and you remove him and you don't have any replacement. Like, it's going to be tough on the Dolphins this year on offense. Jonnu Smith had a kind of a weird breakout out of nowhere season. He was really, really good last year for the second half of the year. And now he's just gone. Like, I don't know if he could replicate that with Steelers either, because it was such an outlier season for him. But to Jori's point, having a second tight end, you can look, this is a new wave thing in the NFL, a lot of two tight end sets and using those guys as matchup issues. And maybe they can figure that out on the fly, because don't have really that long until the season starts. But yes, you add Jonnu to the Steelers offense. And I thought he had way more value in the Dolphins offense because they just leaned on him game after game after game last year.
Also, do we make anything of Raheem Mostert, who went to Twitter? I think we've all seen it at this point. The quote, hot take, he uses potty words here. I won't, thank you. Be a pro bowler on the Dolphins, get treated like poopy. Happy for my guys, though. Go ball out. I mean, Jori, do we make of anything of, somebody that knows that locker room well coming out and kind of making a loud statement against the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think Raheem Mostert's willingness to say this publicly and not feel like there's a reason he shouldn't is pretty telling. Now, I did hear from a coach on another team who sent me the link to that story and was like, well, this is never good. So I think that coaches are aware of this and aware of the locker room dynamic. I don't get the sense that Mike McDaniel is concerned about this. Like, he just seems so unfazed by things like that. And maybe that's just the personality and it's not actually how he's feeling internally. But I think if you're Chris Greer and you're the general manager and you've been there that long, and we've talked about the tenure he's had relative to the success he's had as an outlier in the NFL, you have to ask yourself, well, what is the nature of this locker room? Now, I'll also say that Raheem Mostert is saying this about guys who were pretty public about their desire to leave. So not really to leave, but really to get paid in a way that they felt like they weren't. So I think the Dolphins don't want to end up in a position where they continue to have players who they pretty much have to let leave because they are, one, not willing to pay them what they want, and two, they get to this point of such acrimony that there's not necessarily a solving point. But you could also argue the counterpoint, which is, hey, Myles Garrett said he wanted out, give him money, and he's just fine.
I think this does all matter. I mean, guys around the league notice, like, You think about the last couple free agency periods. Who are some of the big time free agents who have left for other teams? Javon Holland and Christian Wilkins, I mean, and Robert Hunt. I mean, these are guys leaving the Dolphins because they don't want to pay them. And Jonnu Smith has this great breakout year, really is the centerpiece of their offense in many ways over the second half. He wants a little bit of a raise, and the Dolphins are like, you're getting traded. Like, guys notice that, right? Like, I just think there's kind of a culture issue with the Dolphins. Mike McDaniel is very open, weirdly, about, I'd fine guys for being late to meetings and it didn't do any good. Like, ooh, that's not very good. And then you think back, and I've brought up this example before, a little more than a year ago, they basically ran Vic Fangio out of town because guys didn't like playing for Vic Fangio, who goes to the Eagles. And me and you, Jory, we talked to guys all Super Bowl week. They love playing for Vic Fangio. You know why? Because Vic Fangio is one of the best defense coordinators in the NFL, but the Dolphins were like, nah, you're too tough on us. Get out of here. So I just think there's a big issue with the Dolphins now. They've had a lot of talent leave the room. You got guys like Raheem Mostert being very public about, hey, this is how they treat guys. I think guys around the NFL notice that. I think that there's a lot going on with the Dolphins right now that's really not good.
I agree. And you know who feels vindicated seeing this right now? There are a lot of people around the league who, when the NFLPA puts out their player surveys every year, say the Dolphins are just getting high rankings because they have a new facility. It's not actually the culture, it's the facility. All you need to do is build a new facility. And I'm telling this, and some of these teams really should be upgrading their facility, who I've had this conversation with. And I'm like, you just don't want to upgrade your facility, so you're annoyed that other people have. I'm not saying you get a new building every year, but there are some minimum metrics that many teams are meeting that the person who primarily likes to tell me this, their team is not meeting. That said, this is a pretty good example of just because you get good grades on your travel and your family treatment and all that doesn't mean the culture is where you want it. And I think you make a good point, Frank, that there are cultural questions. Now, what I would say is when Mike McDaniel gets the guys in the building, will there still be these issues? And also, how much of a cushion does he have if they really start losing? Because I do feel like Tyreek Hill, we've seen his volatility in all sorts of different ways at each team he's been at. And I think that it was easy to say that Tyreek Hill wanting out at the last game of the year was just a frustration from not having a quarterback healthy to throw it to him. But the more guys who say stuff like this, the more you have to say, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Now, also, there's still no assurance that there's going to be a healthy quarterback to throw it to him. I mean, at some point, the health of Tua is what the health of Tua is. We'll get to some prove it thoughts on McDaniel and the Dolphins in a second, but I one more Steelers question for you guys. As we look at this across the landscape, and you mentioned, Joy, I think smartly, that all in is maybe the wrong term, but they're definitely in let's go win some football games mode. I can't make that mode make any sense with the TJ Watt trade, but I keep hearing everybody tell me that people are calling about TJ Watt.
He's not getting traded. No.
People can call about anyone. People call about everyone, actually. And that's the whole, like, Stephen Jones of the Dallas Cowboys likes to say, player acquisition is 365 days a year, and you should always be making calls. In fact, they're not doing their jobs if they're not exploring it. Even if they don't have interest, they need to explore because they need to have an understanding of what the market looks like now and how these market trends are going. I'll give you an analogy. So my fiance Simeon and I are moving next week to an apartment together. And so we were monitoring the market of New York real estate for a while. And the apartments that we didn't end up wanting, I keep wanting to be like, oh, is that off the market yet? Is that like real estate company that told me 2 months ago that the unit was in high demand, so they couldn't lower the price, and then the unit's still on the market? Like, what's going on there? And I keep sending him all these updates, and I don't want to move to these apartments. We already signed a lease, we're moving, but I'm just so fascinated how these market trends work, because who knows, maybe we'll be looking on the market another time. And so if you're an NFL team, you have to say, I want to understand what the market looks like. I want to understand, hey, here's what the Steelers told me the price of TJ Watt was, even if they say they're not trading him, and here's what it ultimately comes out to when he gets his new contract. Like, you want to understand those dynamics for your future transactions, so you make those calls. With all due respect to Adam Schefter, who is a great reporter and a great person, this is posturing. Of course, TJ Watt's not thrilled that things got done before him. No one I talk to actually believes that he is going to be moved or the Steelers will let him be moved. And he's still under contract there. Like, I know that teams are sometimes a little bit annoying when they're like, why do we need to give this extension? There's another year on the deal. But all the more so with the trade, I really don't anticipate that TJ Watt is going to refuse to play this year. Maybe I'll be eating my words, and all the more so when he'll have probably the best chance for the playoffs that he's had in a few years, and definitely the best quarterback that the roster has had in a few years. You got to think this gets worked out.
Yeah, I viewed this as basically the exact same as you, Jory. TJ Watt wants a raise. He has really no leverage. So what does he do? Well, somebody leaks out to a very prominent reporter, hey, teams might be calling on TJ now, which makes really honestly no logical sense when you think about a team that just acquired a 29-year-old tight end and a 31-year-old quarterback. Now they're going to take calls on TJ Watt? Like, no, that doesn't really make sense.
They can take calls.
Like,
TJ,
of course. Like,
you should call.
Like, I don't think Omar Khan is hanging up his phone when other guys call, but I don't think they're really interested at all. And then it leaks out like, no, the Steelers have no interest, which we could tell which side that comes from. So, yeah, TJ Watt has no leverage right now. Like, he's trying to drum up something to get a raise, and he probably will. Like, it just seems like it's inevitable, but it's one of those, it's June 30th. We have nothing else to play here. We have no cards right now. Let's just leak out there that, hey, maybe TJ will get traded when there's really, I'd be stunned. That would be one of the most stunning trades of the NFL in the last 25 years. If TJ Watt gets traded, it just seems like he's destined to end his career as a Steeler, or, his prime as a Steeler. Let's say that. We never know at the end of a guy's career, but yeah, I don't really take any of that very seriously. TJ Watt ain't going anywhere.
A buddy of mine that is an agent, told me years ago, just follow who benefits from the rumor and you'll know who leaked it. 100 times out of 100, if you actually figure out who benefits from it,
here?
You leak it.
Yeah. What's the agenda? Mm-hmm.
We need to, as a general population of people watching football news, ask ourselves the same question every time we see a report leak. Because this, to me, is a perfect example of the fact that it's a slow news cycle. There are a lot of insiders that make a lot of money, and part of their job is to make sure that they're putting content out there, that they're feeding things out there. No different than mock drafts. I've had prominent mock drafters flat out tell me on the record that sometimes you just mix up a mock draft to keep things interesting. Got to get them clicks, right? Like, I just think we got to look sometimes as a smart population at a TJ Watt moment and say, hey, middle of, the offseason, this isn't news. As Jori said, everybody knows that you call on every one of these players. But right now, it's kind of a dead period. And hey, I can throw it out there. No harm, no foul to anybody. And it's a good talking point for networks to sit there and build content around. Like, it's just that this isn't even a conspiracy theory. This is just like follow who benefits from it. And you see, like, the only people that benefit from a TJ Watt rumor of a trade are content makers. So, of course, content makers are going to put out TJ Watt trade rumors when they get them. Like, it's just follow the leader and you know what's happening. That's all I have to say. But you're right. Shefty is one of the best. He's a great dude.